The halls of Buckingham Palace, with their towering golden chandeliers and centuries-old tapestries, have been silent witnesses to some of the greatest political and personal dramas in British history. From power struggles to whispered betrayals, the monarchy has weathered the storms of scandal, war, and change. But today, a new storm brews within the royal household, one that threatens to redefine the legacy of King Charles III and further fracture the already fragile ties binding Prince Harry and Meghan Markle to the monarchy. For those who have followed the British royal family's evolution over the past decade, the tension between the Windsors and the Duke and Duchess of Sussex is nothing new. Ever since Harry and Meghan's dramatic exit from their senior royal roles in 2020, a move widely dubbed Megxit, the couple has been at odds with the institution that once defined their lives. They have spoken out in explosive interviews, revealed private grievances to millions, and carved out a new existence in the United States. Their actions, particularly Meghan's candid disclosures about the struggles she faced within the royal fold, have been perceived by many within the palace as a betrayal of the monarchy's long-standing code of discretion. King Charles III, who ascended the throne in the wake of Queen Elizabeth II's passing, has now made a decision that will forever etch his reign in history. A confidential document has surfaced detailing funeral arrangements for the king's eventual passing, a moment the palace meticulously plans for, even in times of good health. The document states that when the time comes, all members of the British royal family will be invited to honor the king's legacy, except for one, Meghan Markle. Though Prince Harry and their children, Archie and Lilibet, will be granted access, Meghan's name is absent from the list of those permitted to attend. At first glance, this exclusion may seem like just another twist in the ongoing feud between the Sussexes and the palace. Yet, this decision carries weight far beyond a mere family disagreement. It signals something deeper, a deliberate, symbolic move by King Charles III that raises pressing questions about the monarchy's future. Why would the king go to such lengths to ensure that Meghan Markle is not present at his own funeral? What does this exclusion say about the monarchy's stance on those who challenge its traditions? And perhaps most importantly, how does Prince Harry, once his father's beloved and carefree younger son, react to this unprecedented decision? Those close to the king suggest that this move is not just about personal grievances, it is about control. King Charles III has reportedly grown increasingly wary of the ways in which Meghan's presence has shaped media narratives about the monarchy. Ever since the Oprah Winfrey interview, in which Meghan spoke candidly about her struggles within the royal family, including allegations of racism and lack of support, the monarchy has been in constant damage control mode. Each new statement from Meghan, whether in interviews, her Netflix series, or her podcast, has placed the royal institution under scrutiny. To King Charles, ensuring that his funeral does not become yet another stage for controversy is paramount. But does barring Meghan Markle from attending his funeral achieve this goal, or does it only add fuel to the fire? By taking such a bold step, Charles III risks further deepening the rift within his own family. For Harry, the exclusion of his wife is not just an institutional decision, it is deeply personal. Despite stepping away from royal duties, Harry has never wavered in his public defense of Meghan, often stating that he left the UK to protect her from what he calls the same toxic media environment that he believes contributed to the tragic fate of his mother, Princess Diana. The weight of history looms large over this decision. The British monarchy has long been known for its strict adherence to protocol, but it has also shown, time and again, an ability to evolve in the face of modern pressures. Queen Elizabeth II, for all her traditionalism, found ways to modernize the crown's image, from appearing in televised broadcasts to adjusting royal policies on marriage and divorce. King Charles III, despite his more progressive environmental and social views, has now made a decision that, to some, feels like a step backward, one that underscores the deep fractures between the old and the new. The global reaction to this news has been swift and polarized. Royal commentators, media outlets, and fans of the monarchy have been quick to debate whether Charles III is making a justified move to protect the sanctity of his farewell, or if he is letting personal bias dictate his legacy. On one hand, his supporters argue that the monarchy must preserve its traditions, and that allowing Meghan's presence would overshadow the solemn nature of the event. On the other hand, critics accuse the king of being vindictive, suggesting that his decision to exclude Meghan reflects lingering animosity rather than the best interests of the institution. The echoes of past royal exclusions also add another layer to the controversy. The British royal family has a long history of exiling or sidelining individuals who challenge its norms, from Wallis Simpson, the American divorcee whose relationship with King Edward VIII led to his abdication, to Princess Diana, who found herself increasingly isolated in the years leading up to her untimely death. Even within the more modern era, the treatment of Meghan Markle draws inevitable comparisons to these past figures, raising the question of whether the monarchy has truly changed, or if it remains as unyielding as ever to those who disrupt its image. Yet, beyond the politics and the public spectacle, the heart of this decision lies within one man's perception of his own legacy. For Charles III, his reign represents the culmination of a lifetime spent preparing to wear the crown. Every decision he makes is, in some way, a reflection of the path he envisions for the monarchy after he is gone. By choosing to exclude Meghan Markle from his funeral, he is making a statement, a declaration of the values he believes the crown should uphold. But will history view this decision as a necessary measure to protect the institution, or will it be remembered as a final act of division within an already fractured family? As the world watches, as commentators dissect every angle, and as Harry is forced to navigate the consequences of his father's ruling, one thing remains certain. This decision has set the stage for yet another chapter in the ongoing royal saga. The tension between King Charles III and Meghan Markle did not erupt overnight. It was not the result of a single moment or a fleeting dispute. Instead, it was a slow-burning feud that unfolded over the years, fueled by misunderstandings, cultural clashes, and deeply rooted institutional traditions that clashed with Meghan's modern approach to royal life. At the core of this conflict is a tale of two vastly different worlds, one built on centuries of rigid hierarchy and the other shaped by the fluidity of personal ambition and self-expression. When Meghan Markle first stepped into the royal sphere, many believed she represented a fresh, progressive change for the monarchy. As a biracial, American actress with a successful career, she was unlike any royal bride before her. She was outspoken, confident, and unafraid to use her platform to address social issues. But what was seen by some as an asset was viewed by others within the royal establishment as a challenge to the existing order. In the early days of her relationship with Prince Harry, there were signs that Meghan's presence in the royal family would not be seamless. The British press, notorious for its sharp scrutiny of newcomers to the monarchy, quickly turned their attention to Meghan's background, dissecting every aspect of her life. The headlines that followed were often laced with undertones of prejudice, drawing stark comparisons between her and Kate Middleton, the Duchess of Cambridge. Where Kate had been celebrated for her grace and deference to tradition, Meghan was framed as the outsider, the disruptor, the woman who didn't quite fit the mold. Despite the public pressure, Meghan appeared determined to embrace her new role. She and Harry embarked on royal tours, attended high-profile events, and championed charitable causes. For a time, it seemed as though she was carving out a space for herself within the royal fold. However, behind the palace walls, tensions were mounting. Reports surfaced of disagreements between Meghan and senior palace staff, with accusations of a culture clash between her American directness and the British monarchy's preference for quiet diplomacy. One of the earliest and most publicized conflicts involved Meghan's wedding preparations. According to insiders, Meghan and Kate Middleton had a disagreement over flower girl dresses, a seemingly minor dispute that the press exaggerated into a full-blown royal scandal. Some reports suggested that Meghan had made Kate cry, while others claimed the opposite. Regardless of the truth, the incident was symbolic of the underlying frictions within the royal household. Two women, each representing different expectations of what it meant to be a duchess, finding themselves at odds in a world that scrutinized their every move. But the real breaking point came when Meghan and Harry decided to step away from their royal duties. In early 2020, the couple announced their intention to carve out a new life, one that would allow them greater independence from the monarchy. Their decision, revealed in an Instagram post, rather than through the traditional palace channels, sent shockwaves through the institution. Queen Elizabeth II was reportedly taken aback, and King Charles, then still the Prince of Wales, was said to have been deeply disappointed by the suddenness of their announcement. What followed was a period of intense negotiations, as Buckingham Palace worked to establish the terms of the Sussexes' departure. The final agreement saw Harry and Meghan stripped of their HRH titles and barred from using the word royal in their branding. They relocated to California, where they began to build their new lives, signing multimillion-dollar deals with media giants like Netflix and Spotify. From the outside, it seemed as though they had successfully freed themselves from the constraints of royal life, but the reality was far more complicated. Their departure had not just been about seeking independence. It had also been about escaping the scrutiny and treatment Meghan claimed she endured within the royal family. In their infamous Oprah Winfrey interview, Meghan revealed the depth of her struggles, speaking candidly about feeling isolated and unsupported. The most shocking revelation came when she disclosed that there had been conversations within the palace about the potential skin color of her unborn son, Archie. The allegations sent ripples across the world, casting a shadow over the royal family and forcing them into damage control mode. King Charles III, then Prince Charles, was particularly affected by the fallout. As the heir to the throne, he had spent decades carefully shaping his public image, working to modernize the monarchy while still upholding its traditions. The revelations from the Oprah interview threatened to undo years of effort, placing him in the difficult position of balancing public perception with his personal relationships. According to sources close to the palace, Charles felt blindsided by the extent of Meghan and Harry's grievances. He had reportedly extended a warm welcome to Meghan in the early days of her relationship with Harry, even walking her down the aisle at her wedding when her own father was unable to attend. But as time went on, he found himself increasingly at odds with the Sussexes' approach to royal life. For Charles, the monarchy was an institution above all else. Its strength lay in its ability to endure, to adapt without losing its core identity. Meghan, however, had introduced an entirely new dynamic, one that challenged the traditional silence the royal family had maintained in the face of controversy. Her willingness to speak openly about her struggles, to take control of her own narrative rather than allowing the palace to manage it, was seen by Charles and other senior royals as a direct challenge to the monarchy's carefully curated image. As tensions escalated, Charles and Harry's relationship also began to fray. Reports emerged that Harry had felt increasingly sidelined within the family, particularly after the birth of Prince William's children, who took precedence in the line of succession. While he had once shared a close bond with his father, that bond had been severely tested by the events of the past few years. By the time King Charles III ascended the throne following Queen Elizabeth II's passing, the damage was already done. While the monarchy continued to function, the rift between the royal family and the Sussexes remained deep. The decision to exclude Meghan from Charles's future funeral arrangements is, in many ways, a culmination of these years of tension. A final declaration from the king that, despite their shared past, Meghan Markle is no longer considered part of the royal fold. But does this decision mark the end of the conflict, or is it merely another chapter in a feud that will continue to shape the future of the monarchy? The exclusion of Meghan Markle from such a significant royal event is more than just a personal snub. It is a reflection of the broader power struggle between tradition and modernity, between those who seek to preserve the old ways and those who believe the monarchy must evolve to survive. As the dust settles on this latest revelation, one thing is clear. The story of Meghan Markle and the British royal family is far from over. And with Harry caught in the middle, forced to navigate his loyalties to both his father and his wife, the choices he makes in the coming years will determine whether this rift can ever truly be healed. For a monarchy built on centuries of tradition and precedent, few decisions are made lightly. Every move within the royal family, especially one as significant as barring a member from a state funeral, is meticulously calculated, weighed against potential consequences, and carefully executed. The revelation that Meghan Markle will be excluded from King Charles III's future funeral plans is not just a personal rejection. It is a statement, one that carries deep implications for the monarchy, its internal conflicts, and the future of its public image. The decision first came to light through a leaked document detailing the protocols for King Charles III's eventual passing. These arrangements, often referred to by code names, have been in place for decades, ensuring that when the time comes, the transition of power occurs seamlessly. However, amidst the standard arrangements for the funeral, who will be present, the sequence of events, the ceremonial rites, one detail stood out. the explicit exclusion of Meghan Markle from all official proceedings. The wording in the document is said to be direct. While Prince Harry and his children, Archie and Lilibet, are granted full access to the ceremonies, Meghan is not included. This decision, unprecedented in modern royal history, raises an immediate question. Why? What has led the king to take such a decisive stance against his own daughter-in-law? To understand the reasoning behind Charles's choice, one must look beyond the personal grievances and into the larger framework of the monarchy's survival. Those close to Buckingham Palace suggest that this is not merely about family tensions. It is about ensuring that the funeral does not become a spectacle, a media frenzy dominated by Meghan's presence rather than the solemnity of the event itself. The royal family has long maintained a strict policy of avoiding controversy during state occasions. The funeral of Queen Elizabeth II, for instance, was executed with near-perfect precision. Every aspect, from the carefully choreographed procession to the seating arrangements of world leaders, was designed to reflect the dignity and unity of the monarchy. Any hint of scandal, division, or discord was swiftly managed to preserve the image of an unbreakable institution. The concern among palace officials is that Meghan's presence at Charles's funeral could disrupt that carefully controlled environment. Since stepping down as a senior royal, Meghan has remained one of the most polarizing figures associated with the monarchy. To her supporters, she represents a modern, outspoken woman who challenged an outdated institution. To her critics, she is a disruptive force, someone who has capitalized on her royal connections while simultaneously attacking the very system that gave her that platform. Charles, known for his pragmatic approach to leadership, is reportedly wary of allowing any potential distractions at his funeral. He has spent years crafting his own legacy, one that seeks to modernize the monarchy while still preserving its traditions. His ascension to the throne was met with both anticipation and skepticism, as many questioned whether he could maintain the same level of public respect and admiration that his mother commanded. For Charles, his funeral represents one final opportunity to reinforce the values he holds dear: stability, continuity, and an unwavering dedication to duty. The presence of Meghan Markle, he believes, would jeopardize that vision. Given the media frenzy that has surrounded Meghan's every move since joining the royal family, her attendance at such a high-profile event would inevitably shift the focus away from the king's life and legacy and toward the ongoing drama between the Sussexes and the royal family. Every glance, every interaction, every seating arrangement would be analyzed, dissected, and turned into headlines. Instead of a nation mourning its monarch, the world would be debating whether Meghan and Kate exchanged cold stares or if Harry felt torn between his wife and his family. But Charles's decision is not without risk. By taking such a definitive stance against Meghan, he invites criticism that could damage his reputation, particularly among younger generations who have grown increasingly skeptical of the monarchy's relevance. Excluding Meghan from such a significant event reinforces the perception that the monarchy is unyielding, unwilling to embrace change, and incapable of bridging the generational and cultural divides that have become so pronounced in recent years. Some within the royal family reportedly advised against this move, fearing that it would only deepen the divide between Harry and his father. While their relationship has been strained for years, sources suggest that Charles still holds hope for a reconciliation with his younger son. But by barring Meghan from his funeral, he risks sending an unmistakable message to Harry, one that suggests that as long as Meghan remains by his side, full acceptance within the royal fold will always be out of reach. For Harry, this decision places him in an impossible position. Despite stepping away from royal duties, he has repeatedly stated that he still considers the UK his home and has expressed his desire to maintain a relationship with his family. But how does he navigate a world in which his father has explicitly excluded his wife from such a critical royal event? Does he attend the funeral alone, leaving Meghan behind in what would be seen as a silent compliance with the monarchy's rejection of her? Or does he take a stand, refusing to participate in an event that deliberately excludes his wife? These questions are not merely hypothetical. They reflect the very real tensions that Harry has faced since choosing to step away from royal life. Every decision he makes is scrutinized, every action analyzed for what it signals about his loyalty to his wife, to his father, to the institution he was born into but no longer serves. His attendance at Charles's funeral, should he choose to go without Meghan, would be a defining moment, one that could either reinforce the divide or signal a step toward reconciliation. The backlash from the public and media is also a factor Buckingham Palace must consider. While many traditionalists will support Charles's decision, viewing it as a necessary step to preserve the dignity of the event, others will see it as a petty and vindictive act. Meghan's exclusion will undoubtedly fuel further narratives about racism, exclusion, and the monarchy's failure to adapt to the modern world. The Sussexes have long cultivated a global audience that is sympathetic to their struggles, and this decision will only add to the perception that Meghan has been unfairly targeted by the royal establishment. It is also worth considering how Meghan herself will react. In the past, she has been vocal about the treatment she has received from the royal family, using her platform to highlight the ways in which she felt marginalized and unsupported. Will she respond to this exclusion with silence, choosing to rise above the controversy? Or will she speak out once again, using this decision as yet another example of the monarchy's unwillingness to accept her? For now, Buckingham Palace remains tight-lipped on the matter. Official statements have been carefully worded, neither confirming nor denying the details of the leaked funeral plans. But the damage has already been done. The public knows the decision has been made, and the consequences of that decision are already taking shape. King Charles III's reign has only just begun, but he has already made a choice that will define his legacy. Whether it will be remembered as a necessary move to protect the monarchy's traditions or a final act of exclusion that sealed the fate of his relationship with Harry and Meghan remains to be seen. One thing, however, is certain. The battle for the future of the monarchy is far from over. And this decision is just another chapter in a story that has captivated the world. When news broke that Meghan Markle had been explicitly barred from attending King Charles III's future funeral, the reaction was swift, polarizing, and global. In an era where social media dictates the speed and depth of public discourse, the decision immediately ignited debates across news outlets, online platforms, and even among world leaders. The exclusion of a single individual from such a significant state event might seem like a private family matter, but given the monarchy's role in the public sphere, every detail of this decision became a point of intense scrutiny. British tabloids, long known for their unrelenting coverage of royal affairs, were among the first to react. The more traditional and pro-monarchy newspapers framed the decision as a necessary and justified move to maintain the solemnity of the occasion. Headlines focused on the importance of keeping the event free from media distractions, citing anonymous palace insiders who insisted that Meghan's presence would overshadow the king's final farewell. Some publications even went as far as to suggest that this decision was made not out of personal animosity, but as an effort to ensure that the funeral did not become a spectacle of controversy and tension. The Daily Mail, for instance, ran articles emphasizing the need to preserve royal traditions, arguing that Meghan's absence would allow the focus to remain on the king's legacy rather than the ongoing feud between the Sussexes and the royal family. The Telegraph echoed similar sentiments, with its royal commentators stressing that the monarchy had survived for centuries by maintaining its traditions and that allowing Meghan to attend would risk turning the event into a soap opera. However, not all British media shared this perspective. The Guardian and The Independent took a more critical approach, questioning whether Charles was allowing personal grievances to dictate an important institutional event. Some editorial pieces accused the king of fueling division rather than fostering reconciliation, arguing that this move only deepened the existing fractures within the royal family. While some commentators acknowledged that Meghan's presence could indeed be a media distraction, they also pointed out that the monarchy had endured far greater controversies in the past, and that banning Meghan was an extreme measure for a funeral that would already be heavily covered by the press. Beyond the UK, the reaction was even more divided. In the United States, where Meghan and Harry have built a strong base of support, the decision was met with widespread condemnation from many prominent media outlets and celebrities. News networks like CNN and MSNBC framed the exclusion as yet another example of the royal family's refusal to modernize, emphasizing the ways in which Meghan had previously spoken out about feeling unwelcomed and isolated within the institution. American talk shows were particularly vocal in their criticism. Meghan's supporters, including those in Hollywood, saw this as a continuation of the treatment she had received since joining the royal family. Some commentators even drew comparisons between Meghan's exclusion and the historical treatment of women who had married into the monarchy but later found themselves ostracized. The View, a popular daytime talk show, dedicated multiple segments to the controversy, with its panelists debating whether Meghan was being unfairly scapegoated for the ongoing tension between Harry and the royal family. Social media platforms erupted with discussions, with hashtags related to the controversy trending worldwide. On Twitter, reactions ranged from outrage to sarcasm, with some users pointing out the irony of Charles attempting to prevent a media circus while simultaneously making a decision that guaranteed even more attention. Supporters of Meghan flooded the platform with messages criticizing the monarchy's decision, while royalists defended Charles, arguing that the move was necessary to uphold tradition. Instagram and TikTok, platforms where younger audiences often engage in political and cultural discourse, also saw a surge in discussions. Many users posted videos analyzing the historical implications of Meghan's exclusion, drawing parallels to previous royal scandals. Some influencers even dissected body language from past royal events, speculating on how deep the divisions between the Sussexes and the royal family truly ran. The reaction from world leaders and public figures was more measured but no less significant. While official statements from governments remained diplomatic, a few political figures weighed in on the matter. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was asked about the controversy during a press conference, where he carefully avoided taking a definitive stance but acknowledged that the British monarchy was going through a period of transition. Other politicians, particularly those in the Commonwealth nations, used this moment to reflect on broader conversations about the monarchy's role in modern society. In Australia, where debates about becoming a republic have gained momentum in recent years, Meghan's exclusion was used as an example of why the monarchy was out of touch with contemporary values. Some Australian lawmakers suggested that this decision reinforced the idea that the monarchy was an outdated institution, unable to adapt to a world that increasingly values inclusivity and progress. Meanwhile, within the UK, political leaders were largely silent on the matter, with most choosing to focus on broader discussions about the monarchy's future rather than engaging in the specific controversy surrounding Meghan's exclusion. However, a few MPs from the Labour Party made comments suggesting that the decision reflected poorly on the royal family's ability to move forward in a modern, multicultural Britain. Amidst all this, Buckingham Palace remained characteristically reserved, issuing only a brief statement when pressed by journalists. The statement neither confirmed nor denied the specifics of the leaked document, but reiterated that funeral arrangements for the monarch would be conducted with the utmost respect and adherence to tradition. Palace aides, when contacted for further comment, refused to elaborate, leaving much of the speculation unanswered. What is clear from the overwhelming public reaction is that this decision has done little to quell the ongoing divide between the monarchy and the Sussexes. If anything, it has only amplified the existing narratives. Those who support Charles see this as a move to preserve the dignity of the monarchy, while those who support Meghan view it as another example of the institution's unwillingness to embrace change. The long-term consequences of this decision remain to be seen. Will Charles's move be remembered as a necessary act to protect his legacy, or will it be seen as a final, definitive rejection of Meghan Markle? As the days pass and the media cycle continues to analyze every aspect of this controversy, one thing remains certain. The world is watching, and the monarchy's every move will continue to shape its public perception for years to come. In the days following the revelation that Meghan Markle had been explicitly barred from attending King Charles III's funeral, the world waited for her response. Would she issue a public statement? Would she remain silent and let speculation fill the void? Or would she take this as yet another opportunity to speak out about the challenges she faced within the royal family? Unlike previous instances where Meghan had been at the center of royal controversies, this time she remained noticeably quiet. There were no official statements from her representatives, no carefully worded social media posts, and no immediate sit-down interviews with high-profile journalists. This silence, however, did not prevent the media and the public from attempting to interpret her reaction. Reports from sources close to Meghan suggested that she had been aware of the exclusion long before the information became public. According to insiders, she was not surprised by the decision. Given the strained relationship she had with the royal family, particularly King Charles III, she may have even expected it. Some sources indicated that Meghan saw this as yet another confirmation that she had never truly been accepted within the monarchy. In private, those close to her described her reaction as one of disappointment rather than shock. While she had made peace with the fact that her relationship with the royal family was beyond repair, the symbolic nature of the exclusion still stung. The decision to bar her from the funeral was not just a personal snub. It was a public statement that she was no longer considered a part of the royal fold. It was one thing to step away from royal duties and move to California for a fresh start, but it was another thing entirely to be deliberately excluded from a state event of such significance. For Meghan, the decision carried emotional weight beyond the immediate implications. Throughout her time as a royal, she had often spoken about feeling isolated and unwelcome within the institution. In interviews and public appearances, she had shared stories of struggling to find support within the family, feeling unheard, and experiencing moments of deep personal distress. Being barred from the king's funeral seemed to her like the final, undeniable proof that she had never truly belonged. Despite this, Meghan reportedly chose to take the high road. While the media speculated about her reaction, she focused on her life in the United States. Paparazzi captured photos of her going about her routine in Montecito, attending charity events, spending time with friends, and continuing her various business endeavors. Some commentators saw this as a calculated move, a way to show that she was unbothered by the exclusion. Others believed it was a genuine reflection of her priorities, that she had long since moved on from the royal drama and was not interested in engaging in another public dispute. However, the silence did not mean there was no response at all. Meghan's allies and close friends began speaking out on her behalf, offering subtle but pointed commentary on the situation. Prominent figures in the media and entertainment industry voiced their disapproval of the monarchy's decision, calling it unnecessarily harsh and outdated. Some framed it as another example of Meghan being unfairly targeted, arguing that excluding her from the funeral was a reflection of the deep-rooted resistance to change within the royal institution. At the same time, there was speculation about whether Meghan and Harry had private discussions regarding the exclusion. Would Harry still attend the funeral without her? Would he take a stand and refuse to participate in an event that deliberately excluded his wife? While some believe that Harry would honor his father's wishes and attend regardless, others speculated that this could be the final breaking point in his relationship with the royal family. Meghan's supporters saw this as a moment of vindication. To them, this exclusion reinforced everything Meghan had ever said about the royal family, that it was an institution resistant to outsiders, unwilling to embrace change, and quick to cast out those who did not conform. Social media platforms were flooded with posts from those who believed that Meghan had been unfairly treated from the very beginning, and this decision was simply the latest in a long line of rejections. Critics, however, saw things differently. Some believed that the exclusion was justified, arguing that Meghan had distanced herself from the monarchy and should not expect to be included in its most sacred traditions. They pointed out that funerals, especially those of monarchs, are deeply symbolic events that carry weight beyond individual relationships. To them, Charles's decision was not personal. It was about protecting the dignity and order of the monarchy. For Meghan, the challenge was navigating this moment without letting it consume her public image. She had spent years working to establish a new identity outside of the royal family, one that was centered on philanthropy, media projects, and personal branding. Engaging in another public feud with the monarchy could overshadow everything else she had built. On the other hand, completely ignoring the situation could make her appear indifferent to the significance of the moment. The question remained, would she eventually break her silence? Would there come a moment when she would address the exclusion directly? Many speculated that Meghan would eventually share her thoughts, whether through an interview, a documentary, or her own media projects. Given her history of speaking out, it seemed unlikely that she would let such a monumental decision pass without at least some form of response. But for now, she remained quiet. And in that silence, the world continued to debate what her next move would be. Prince Harry had always been known as the rebel of the royal family, the one who walked a fine line between duty and personal freedom. From his youthful indiscretions to his military service and later his decision to step back from royal life, Harry had constantly been at the center of defining moments that shaped his identity. Now, faced with the reality that his father, King Charles III, had deliberately barred his wife from attending his future funeral, Harry found himself at a crossroads unlike any he had faced before. The weight of this decision pressed down on him in ways few could fully understand. His entire life had been defined by the traditions of the monarchy, by the expectations placed upon him as the spare to the heir. But in recent years, he had chosen a different path, one that prioritized his love for Meghan and their children over the rigid structures of royal duty. This latest revelation, however, tested the limits of his loyalty. To the world, Harry's dilemma appeared simple: attend the funeral alone or refuse to participate in an event that deliberately excluded his wife. But for Harry, the reality was far more complex. The choice before him was not just about attending a funeral. It was about where he truly belonged. Sources close to Harry suggested that he had known about his father's decision long before it became public knowledge. Like Meghan, he had not been blindsided by the exclusion, though that did little to soften the blow. He had spent years fighting for his wife's acceptance within the royal family, only to be met with resistance at every turn. The decision to bar Meghan from the funeral only reinforced the notion that no matter what he did, the divide between him and his family would always exist. For Harry, the exclusion of Meghan was not just a rejection of her. It was a rejection of the life they had built together. It was a message that the monarchy did not recognize her as part of the family, despite the fact that she was the mother of 2 royal children. And yet, despite everything, Harry still felt the weight of duty pulling at him. His relationship with his father had been complicated for years. As a child, he had admired Charles, even as he struggled to understand his father's often distant demeanor. The loss of his mother, Princess Diana, had only deepened the emotional gap between them, with Harry often feeling that he had to navigate his grief alone. Over the years, Charles had made efforts to connect with his son, but those efforts were often overshadowed by the demands of royal life and the expectations placed on them both. When Harry made the decision to step away from his royal duties in 2020, it had placed an even greater strain on their relationship. The conversations that followed were tense, with Charles reportedly struggling to understand why his son would choose to leave behind a life of privilege and duty. Harry, on the other hand, felt that he had no choice. That staying within the royal structure would have meant sacrificing his own happiness and, more importantly, Meghan's well-being. Now, with his father's funeral arrangements excluding Meghan, Harry was forced to reckon with the idea that his decision to step away from royal life had come at a cost he could no longer ignore. Would attending the funeral alone be seen as an act of submission, a sign that he was willing to accept the monarchy's rejection of his wife? Or would refusing to attend be perceived as yet another act of defiance, one that could permanently sever the last remaining ties between him and his family? The pressures on Harry extended beyond personal emotions. The world was watching, waiting to see how he would respond. The British press was already speculating about his potential course of action, with royal experts debating whether he would choose duty over love or if he would stand in solidarity with Meghan. For Harry, the decision was agonizing. Attending the funeral alone would mean walking into a world where he no longer fully belonged, where he would be surrounded by family members who viewed him as an outsider. He would have to sit among the very people who had orchestrated Meghan's exclusion, knowing that every movement, every expression, would be scrutinized. It would mean grieving for his father, while also confronting the painful reality that he and Meghan had been effectively erased from the royal narrative. On the other hand, refusing to attend would send a clear message that he had chosen his wife over the monarchy once and for all. It would be the final nail in the coffin of his royal connections, a declaration that he no longer considered himself bound by the expectations of his birthright. While this might have seemed like an easy choice for someone who had spent years distancing himself from royal life, the truth was far more complicated. Despite everything, Harry still felt a sense of duty, not just to his father, but to the institution that had shaped his entire existence. Friends and advisors reportedly urged him to consider the long-term implications of his decision. Some encouraged him to attend the funeral, arguing that his presence would demonstrate maturity and respect, even in the face of adversity. Others warned that attending without Meghan would be seen as a betrayal of the very principles he had fought so hard to uphold. And then there was the matter of his children. Archie and Lilibet, though still young, would one day learn about this moment. They would one day ask why their mother had been excluded from their grandfather's funeral, why their father had been forced to make a choice between duty and love. The decision Harry made now would shape their understanding of their heritage, of their place in the royal family and the world beyond it. As the days passed, speculation continued to mount. Would he go? Would he stay away? Would he attempt to negotiate some form of compromise? For now, Harry remained silent, weighing the consequences of his decision with the knowledge that no matter what he chose, the world would have an opinion. One thing was clear. No matter what path he took, this moment would define his relationship with the monarchy for years to come. King Charles III's decision to bar Meghan Markle from attending his funeral is not just a moment of personal or familial discord. It is a statement that will define his reign and shape the monarchy's future. Every monarch is remembered for key decisions that leave a lasting impact, and this exclusion will undoubtedly be one of the defining moments of Charles's legacy. From the moment he ascended the throne, Charles was faced with the challenge of leading a monarchy at a time when public trust in the institution was wavering. The passing of Queen Elizabeth II had left an irreplaceable void. She had been the steady figurehead of the United Kingdom for over 70 years, guiding the nation through wars, political upheaval, and societal transformations. Her presence was synonymous with stability, and with her gone, Charles faced the enormous responsibility of proving himself as a worthy successor. Unlike his mother, Charles had always been a more polarizing figure. His long wait to take the throne, his highly publicized divorce from Princess Diana, and his later marriage to Camilla had all contributed to a complex public perception of him. While many respected his environmental advocacy and philanthropic efforts, others saw him as a monarch who lacked the same unshakable presence that defined Elizabeth's reign. The decision to exclude Meghan from his funeral arrangements is part of a larger strategy to solidify his control over the monarchy. At its core, this move is about protecting the institution, about ensuring that when the time comes for the nation to bid farewell to its king, the focus remains on him and not on the controversies that have plagued his family in recent years. But the question remains, does this decision strengthen the monarchy, or does it reveal its inability to adapt to the modern world? For centuries, the monarchy has survived by carefully managing its image, balancing tradition with the need to evolve. Queen Elizabeth II mastered this art, understanding that in order to maintain the public's support, the royal family needed to embrace change while still upholding its core principles. She navigated the challenges of modern media, allowed younger royals to take on more progressive roles, and made strategic adjustments when public sentiment demanded it. Charles, however, faces a different challenge. He is ruling in an era where social media dictates much of the public discourse, where the younger generation is increasingly skeptical of monarchy's relevance, and where the institution is constantly under scrutiny for its handling of race, gender, and inclusivity. In this climate, the exclusion of Meghan Markle sends a clear message. It suggests that the monarchy is unwilling to accept those who challenge its traditions, that it still operates under rigid boundaries that dictate who belongs and who does not. Supporters of Charles argue that his decision is not about rejecting modernity, but about preserving the sanctity of royal customs. They believe that allowing Meghan to attend would be a distraction, a media frenzy that would overshadow the solemnity of the occasion. They argue that Charles, like any monarch, has the right to decide who should be present at his funeral, and that this decision is simply a reflection of the reality that Meghan and Harry are no longer active members of the royal family. Critics, on the other hand, see this as a regressive move, one that exposes the monarchy's unwillingness to evolve. To them, this decision reinforces the idea that the royal family has failed to learn from the past, that it continues to repeat the same patterns of exclusion that have alienated individuals like Princess Diana and Sarah Ferguson before Meghan. By barring Meghan from his funeral, Charles is essentially reinforcing the narrative that she was never truly accepted, that she remains an outsider even in death. This decision also raises questions about the long-term implications for the monarchy. Charles may be the ruling monarch now, but his time on the throne is limited. The future of the monarchy lies in the hands of the next generation. Prince William, Prince George, and the younger royals who will carry the institution forward. How they choose to navigate the fallout from Charles's decision will be crucial. Prince William, as the heir to the throne, will inherit not only the crown but also the consequences of his father's actions. His relationship with Harry has already been deeply strained, and Charles's decision to exclude Meghan only adds another layer of tension to an already fractured dynamic. How William responds to this moment, whether he follows his father's example or takes a more conciliatory approach, will shape his own legacy as the future king. Beyond the immediate family, this decision also has ramifications for the monarchy's relationship with the public. The British monarchy has always relied on public support to justify its existence. While it operates as a constitutional institution, it is ultimately the goodwill of the people that ensures its survival. The exclusion of Meghan, a figure who has both passionate supporters and vocal critics, could further divide public opinion. In recent years, support for the monarchy has fluctuated, with younger generations increasingly questioning its relevance. Polls have shown that while older generations remain largely supportive, younger Britons are more open to the idea of a republic. This generational divide is a significant factor that the royal family must consider as it looks toward the future. The decision to bar Meghan from Charles's funeral may resonate with traditionalists who view it as a necessary move, but it risks alienating the younger demographic who see it as another example of the monarchy being out of touch. Internationally, the monarchy's standing also comes into play. The British royal family is not just a national institution, it is a global symbol. Many Commonwealth nations still recognize the British monarch as their head of state, but in recent years, there has been growing momentum towards severing those ties. Countries like Barbados have already transitioned to a republic, and others, including Australia and Canada, have had active discussions about following suit. The exclusion of Meghan, who is American and biracial, adds another layer to the global perception of the monarchy, potentially reinforcing negative narratives about its resistance to diversity and modernity. Ultimately, Charles's legacy will be defined by how he navigates the balance between tradition and progress. If his goal is to strengthen the monarchy, he must consider not just the decisions he makes in the present, but how they will be remembered in the future. His mother's legacy was built on stability, on her ability to unite people even in times of crisis. If Charles hopes to achieve the same level of respect, he must ask himself whether barring Meghan from his funeral aligns with that vision, or if it will be remembered as a final act of division. For now, the decision stands, and the consequences are unfolding in real time. Whether this move will be seen as a necessary step to protect the monarchy's traditions, or as a miscalculation that deepened existing rifts remains to be seen. But one thing is certain, this moment will be a defining chapter in the reign of King Charles III, shaping how history remembers him and the choices he made. The exclusion of Meghan Markle from King Charles III's funeral is not an isolated incident in the history of the British monarchy. The institution has long been defined by rigid rules, strict protocols, and moments of calculated exclusion that have shaped its legacy. The royal family has repeatedly demonstrated that those who challenge or disrupt its carefully maintained image are often met with distance, isolation, or outright banishment. Meghan's exclusion is the latest chapter in a long history of royal exiles, sidelining, and strategic omissions. Throughout the centuries, British monarchs have made decisions to exclude individuals who were deemed problematic, whether for political, social, or personal reasons. Some of these exclusions were subtle, involving quiet distancing from public duties, while others were dramatic, resulting in full removal from the royal fold. These moments have often served as turning points in royal history, demonstrating the monarchy's struggle to balance tradition with the changing expectations of society. One of the most infamous royal exclusions in modern history was the abdication crisis of King Edward VIII in 1936. Edward, who had ascended the throne following the death of his father, King George V, faced immense controversy over his relationship with Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee. The British government and the Church of England opposed their union, as marrying a divorced woman was considered unacceptable for a reigning monarch. Edward ultimately chose love over duty, abdicating the throne to marry Simpson. His decision not only changed the course of British history, but also led to his effective exile from the royal family. Though he retained the title of Duke of Windsor, Edward lived the rest of his life largely removed from the monarchy. He and Wallis resided in France, making only rare appearances in Britain. His exclusion was deliberate, a message that his choice to step outside royal norms had consequences. The monarchy, determined to preserve its image, distanced itself from the former king. reinforcing the idea that those who challenge royal traditions risk permanent separation. A similar fate befell Princess Margaret, the younger sister of Queen Elizabeth II. While she was not formally exiled, Margaret faced immense pressure to conform to royal expectations. In the 1950s, she fell in love with Group Captain Peter Townsend, a divorced war hero who had served as an equerry to her father, King George VI. Their relationship became the subject of public fascination, but the monarchy's strict rules on divorce and remarriage created a significant obstacle. Margaret was ultimately forced to choose between love and duty. Under immense pressure from the crown, she ended her relationship with Townsend, sacrificing personal happiness for the sake of maintaining royal decorum. Though she remained a member of the royal family, her personal struggles and turbulent relationships kept her at the fringes of the institution. Her experience was another example of how the monarchy has historically placed tradition above personal choice, reinforcing the idea that those who challenge its expectations face significant personal costs. The case of Princess Diana, however, is perhaps the most relevant historical parallel to Meghan Markle's exclusion. Diana, once the beloved Princess of Wales, found herself increasingly isolated from the royal family following her divorce from Prince Charles. Despite her immense popularity with the public, her decision to speak openly about her struggles within the royal household made her a controversial figure within the institution. In her famous 1995 BBC Panorama interview, Diana candidly discussed her failing marriage, the pressures of royal life, and her feelings of isolation. Her willingness to break the monarchy's long-held code of silence was seen as a direct challenge to the crown. As a result, she was gradually distanced from official royal engagements, and by the time of her death in 1997, she had become an outsider to the very institution she had once been a central part of. Diana's funeral was a moment of reckoning for the royal family. The public outpouring of grief was unlike anything seen before, and many felt that the monarchy had failed her in life. The stark contrast between the royal family's measured, restrained response to her death and the overwhelming emotion from the public highlighted the growing divide between the monarchy and the people it served. Meghan Markle's exclusion from Charles's funeral follows a similar trajectory. Like Diana, she has been vocal about the difficulties she faced within the royal family. Her interviews, particularly with Oprah Winfrey, revealed allegations of racism, neglect, and deep emotional distress. These revelations positioned her as an outsider, much like Diana before her. However, Meghan's exclusion is even more explicit. While Diana was sidelined through quiet distancing, Meghan has been formally barred from an event of national and historical significance. This decision is unprecedented in modern times, as no other royal spouse has been so deliberately excluded from such a major event. It signals the monarchy's unwillingness to engage with Meghan in any meaningful way, reinforcing the idea that she is no longer part of the royal narrative. Beyond the British monarchy, royal exclusions have been a common practice across various dynasties. In European history, monarchs have often exiled or distanced family members who posed a threat to their rule. The Russian Romanovs, for example, frequently sent disgraced family members into exile, ensuring that any internal conflicts remained hidden from the public eye. The same tactics were used in the French and Spanish royal families, where individuals who did not align with the monarchy's expectations were quietly removed from public life. In many ways, Charles's decision to bar Meghan reflects this historical pattern. The British monarchy, despite its modernized image, continues to operate under the same principles that have defined royal rule for centuries. Those who conform are protected and included, while those who challenge the institution are pushed aside. The broader question, however, is whether these tactics still work in the modern age. Unlike past eras where royal exclusions could be controlled through limited media coverage, today's world operates on a vastly different landscape. Social media, global news networks, and an increasingly engaged public ensure that no decision goes unnoticed. The exclusion of Meghan is not just a footnote in royal history, it is a global talking point, one that invites scrutiny, debate, and criticism. Moreover, society's expectations of institutions like the monarchy have evolved. In the past, royal decisions were largely accepted without question, but today's audience demands accountability. The treatment of individuals like Meghan is now viewed through the lens of broader discussions about race, gender, and power. The monarchy's ability to navigate these modern expectations will determine its long-term survival. King Charles III's decision to exclude Meghan is, therefore, a gamble. While it may reinforce traditional royal values, it also risks alienating a significant portion of the public. It invites comparisons to past exclusions, reminding people of the times when the monarchy chose to distance itself from figures who challenged its authority. As history has shown, exclusion does not always lead to the desired outcome. In some cases, it strengthens public sympathy for those cast aside, as was the case with Princess Diana. In others, it reinforces the idea that the monarchy is out of touch with the realities of the modern world. Whether Charles's decision will be seen as a necessary act of preservation or a moment of irreversible damage remains to be seen. One thing is certain: this exclusion will not be forgotten. It will become part of the narrative of Charles's reign, a moment that will be analyzed, debated, and compared to past royal decisions for years to come. And as history has repeatedly demonstrated, the choices made by the monarchy often have consequences far beyond their immediate intent. The British monarchy is known for its meticulous planning, and the arrangements for a sovereign's funeral are among the most carefully orchestrated events in the world. The passing of a reigning monarch is not just a moment of personal loss but a historical event that demands precision, order, and adherence to centuries-old traditions. King Charles III's funeral will be no different. However, with the revelation that Meghan Markle has been excluded from attending, this state event now carries a layer of controversy that no amount of royal protocol can completely erase. Planning for a monarch's funeral begins long before their passing. For decades, Buckingham Palace has maintained detailed arrangements under code names, ensuring that every aspect of the transition runs smoothly when the time comes. For Queen Elizabeth II, the operation was known as London Bridge. Similarly, Charles III's funeral plans, rumored to be called Menai Bridge, outline the precise order of events, from the moment of his passing to the days of mourning that will follow. His funeral will be a state event unlike any other, attended by heads of state, dignitaries, and representatives from across the Commonwealth and beyond. Westminster Abbey, where the service is expected to take place, will be filled with royalty, world leaders, and influential figures. The procession through London, the lying-in state at Westminster Hall, and the eventual burial in St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle will all be steeped in tradition, reflecting the grandeur and solemnity of Britain's monarchy. But amidst the grandeur and historical significance of the occasion, one absence will be more notable than any other. Meghan Markle, the wife of Prince Harry, the mother of 2 royal children, and a former senior member of the royal family, will not be there. Her exclusion is not due to personal choice or scheduling conflicts, but by deliberate decision. This absence will inevitably raise questions, some whispered in the corridors of Westminster, others debated openly in the global press. The seating arrangements at royal funerals are often seen as symbolic indicators of family dynamics. At Queen Elizabeth II's funeral, much was made of where Harry and Meghan were seated in relation to senior royals. Analysts dissected their positioning, reading into every detail as a reflection of their standing within the family. At Charles's funeral, the absence of Meghan will send an even clearer message. While Harry will likely be present, his presence without his wife will visually reinforce the division that has grown between the Sussexes and the rest of the royal family. The impact of this decision will not just be felt within the walls of Westminster Abbey. Outside, the public will gather in mourning, watching as Britain says goodbye to its king. The funeral will be broadcast to millions around the world, every moment analyzed and discussed. It is expected to be one of the most watched events of the decade, a spectacle of both tradition and emotion. How the royal family presents itself during this event will be critical. In the past, moments of national mourning have served as opportunities for reconciliation. The funeral of Princess Diana, though deeply painful for the monarchy, became a turning point in the public's relationship with the royal family. The Queen's decision to bow her head as Diana's coffin passed was a rare and powerful moment of humility, one that softened much of the criticism the monarchy had faced in the aftermath of Diana's death. But Charles's funeral, with its rigid exclusion of Meghan, will not offer such a moment of reconciliation. Instead, it will serve as a reminder of the fractures that have defined his reign. There will be no symbolic gesture of unity, no olive branch extended to the Sussexes. Instead, It will be an event marked by a deliberate omission, one that reinforces the message that Meghan is no longer welcome within the institution. The exclusion of Meghan also raises questions about the long-term impact on Harry. As a son mourning his father, he will be expected to take his place among the royal family during the ceremonies. But the weight of the decision to exclude his wife will not be lost on him. Will he be able to fully engage in the mourning process, or will the tension overshadow his experience? Will he feel like an outsider within his own family, standing alone while the rest of the royal household moves in careful coordination? Public perception will also play a significant role. The monarchy is deeply aware of how it is viewed by the public, and every decision is made with an eye on maintaining support. The exclusion of Meghan may appeal to traditionalists who believe in the preservation of royal customs, but it risks alienating younger generations and international audiences who see the decision as unnecessarily harsh. The funeral of King Charles III will mark the end of an era. His reign, though still in progress, has already been shaped by difficult choices, and this will be one of the defining moments of his legacy. But it will also be a moment that underscores the ongoing divisions within the royal family. When the world watches the procession, when commentators discuss the significance of the event, one question will linger. Was this exclusion a necessary act of preservation for the monarchy, or was it a misstep that will only deepen the cracks within the institution? As history has shown, royal funerals are not just about saying goodbye. They are about the future, about what comes next, about the message that is left behind. And in this case, the message will be clear. Meghan Markle is no longer part of the royal story. As the dust settles on the revelation that Meghan Markle has been barred from King Charles III's funeral, the implications of this decision continue to ripple through both the royal family and public discourse. What was initially perceived as a personal and private matter has now become a defining moment in Charles's reign, a symbol of the monarchy's enduring struggle between tradition and modernity, unity and division, control and rebellion. At its core, this exclusion is not just about Meghan Markle. It is about what she represents within the royal narrative. From the moment she entered the royal family, Meghan was a disruptor, an outsider whose presence challenged long-standing traditions. Her marriage to Prince Harry was celebrated as a modern love story, a sign that the monarchy was evolving to embrace diversity and inclusivity. But as time went on, her relationship with the institution became strained, revealing deep-seated tensions that had long existed beneath the surface. This decision to exclude her from Charles's funeral is a culmination of those tensions, a final act that cements her status as an outsider. But what does this mean for the monarchy moving forward? Will this move ultimately strengthen the institution, reinforcing its traditions and preserving its image? Or will it expose the monarchy's resistance to change, further alienating those who believe it must evolve to remain relevant? For King Charles III, the choice to bar Meghan is a calculated one. As the head of the monarchy, he is responsible for maintaining its structure and ensuring its survival. To him, Meghan represents an element of unpredictability, a potential disruption at an event that is meant to be solemn and dignified. His decision reflects his desire to control the narrative, to ensure that his funeral is remembered for its grandeur and historical significance rather than the personal drama that has plagued his family in recent years. However, the monarchy is not an institution that exists in isolation. It relies on public perception and support, and this decision has sparked a debate that extends far beyond the walls of Buckingham Palace. Supporters of the exclusion argue that Meghan has distanced herself from the royal family and should not expect to be included in its most sacred traditions. To them, Charles's decision is not about personal animosity, but about maintaining the dignity of the monarchy. On the other hand, critics view this as yet another example of the institution's unwillingness to embrace change. They argue that excluding Meghan only reinforces the idea that the monarchy remains rigid, resistant to those who do not conform to its expectations. This decision risks alienating younger generations and international audiences who see it as a reflection of outdated values. The impact on Prince Harry cannot be ignored. Once a beloved member of the royal family, Harry now finds himself caught between two worlds, one that he was born into and one that he chose for himself. His presence at the funeral without Meghan will be symbolic, a visual representation of the divide that has grown between him and his family. He will walk alongside his relatives, mourning the loss of his father, while carrying the weight of the decision that has excluded his wife. How he chooses to navigate this moment will shape his future relationship with the monarchy. Will he accept this exclusion as an inevitable consequence of the choices he has made, or will it serve as the final confirmation that he and Meghan can never fully reconcile with the royal family? Beyond the personal impact, this decision raises larger questions about the monarchy's relevance in the modern world. For centuries, the British royal family has survived by adapting to changing societal norms while maintaining its traditions. But in an era where transparency and inclusivity are valued more than ever, does this decision make the monarchy appear out of touch? Countries within the Commonwealth are already questioning their ties to the British crown. Nations like Barbados have removed the British monarch as their head of state, and discussions about republicanism continue to gain traction in countries like Australia and Canada. This decision to exclude Meghan, who, despite the controversies, remains a globally recognized figure, adds another layer to these discussions. It reinforces the perception that the monarchy struggles to reflect the values of the diverse, multicultural societies it represents. The exclusion of Meghan Markle from King Charles III's funeral will not be forgotten. It will be analyzed, debated, and referenced for years to come. It will be remembered as a moment that defined Charles's reign, not just for what it says about his relationship with Meghan, but for what it reveals about his vision for the monarchy. As history has shown, decisions like these have long-term consequences.